Hi friends, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I want to read in the fall and autumn season. I am totally a seasonal mood reader. I love for the book to match the vibe outside. Since summer is my favorite season, I've really only made summer TBRs. I did make a winter TBR last year for the first time and that was fun. I don't think I've ever made a fall one, so this will be my first one, and I have a very large stack, a pile of possibilities, if you will. I am not committing to anything, mostly because I am expecting my first child in a week. Is the due date, so who knows what's gonna happen. You know, some people are like, you'll never have time to read again, and other people are like, no, I had a baby and that's all I did while I was nursing. I don't know where I'm gonna fall in between. I have, I think, 24 books to mention here today. I mean, I could realistically read 24 books in 3 months because I'm counting, you know, September, October, November to be kind of the fall season. But realistically, will all of these get read? Absolutely not. And who knows what kind of reader I'll be when I have a baby. I know I love my audiobooks and I have my Kindle, which will help with middle of the night reading, but reading also makes me sleepy. So who knows? Maybe I'll turn to TV instead. I have no idea what's gonna happen, but I am very excited to read a lot of these books. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I categorize these by genre as usual. I'm gonna start with my favorite, historical fiction. As I was perusing my shelves and thinking about what I wanted to read, I realized that I'm very much in the mood for chunky books. Surprising. Who would have thought? But I'm tired of reading mediocre things. That's been a lot of my reading year. So I thought maybe a bigger book, one that I can sit longer in, one that I can get to know the characters better. Maybe those will be more successful for me because I've been reading just, you know, your average shorter reads, you know, between the 300, 400 page mark, and most of them have been published in the last year or two. And I'm like, no, I need to read some older books, some chunkier books. So a few of these definitely match that kind of description. Starting with a historical fiction author I've yet to try. I have a couple of her books. I've heard great things, and that is Kate Morton. And I have The Distant Hours here. The beginning chapter says, "Hush, can you hear him? The trees can. They are the first to know that he is coming. Listen, the trees of the deep dark wood, shivering and jittering their leaves like papery holes of beaten silver. The sly wind snaking through their tops, whispering that soon they will begin. The trees know, for they are old, and they have seen it all before." That sounds so fall vibe, so like gothic and eerie. Other than that opening paragraph, I have no idea what this book is about. I do know that some people say she tends to drag it on. It's like maybe 100 pages too long, but like I said, I'm in the mood for a chunky read, so I'm really excited to try a Kate Morton and hopefully get swept into the story. Another chunky historical fiction is the start of a duology, and that is The Revolution of Marina M by Janet Fitch. I love a good Soviet Slavic book, and this one is set during the Russian Revolution in the early 1900s. It definitely feels like the right time to read it, especially since the Russian Bolshevik Revolution started in October, so I'm intrigued to see where this saga takes me. The next one on my pile of possibilities is The House is on Fire by Rachel Beanland. I have always wanted to read like the entirety of the Goodreads Choice Awards, which comes out in November for a particular category, specifically historical fiction, because that's my go-to genre. I have a feeling that this one's going to be on that list, and I tried to kind of predict what books are getting the buzz so that I could read them throughout the year rather than just cramming it all in November. I'm not going to read the Goodreads Choice Awards this year because I'm gonna have a baby, just don't have time for that. But I really want to read this one. I've heard excellent things. Christopher and Brooks and Jams gave it 5 stars. I did try Florence Adler Swims Forever last year. I liked it overall. It was a lot more literary, but it wasn't quite what I expected or a total favorite. But I've heard excellent things about this book. It's set in Virginia, 1811, about a fire in a theater and the different ramifications, the different people that it impacted. Perhaps the author that I just really need to read because I just have heard absolutely nothing but wonderful things is William Kent Kruger. I have Ordinary Grace here. I also own This Tender Land, which is the one I'm more intrigued by. My friend's currently borrowing it, and also his newest book just got released and that one's getting a lot of love. So one of those three, whatever one I'm in the mood for at the moment, I feel like I'm gonna want to pick up this fall and see what I think about his writing, if I'll love him like everyone else seems to. This next one I'm picking up for a reason, and that is Bluebird by Genevieve Graham. I really want to get this read, not only because it is one of Melissa's from Libraries and Labrador's favorite reads of last year. This is set in Canada, which I haven't read a lot of Canadian historical fiction. It is a really cheesy, not my favorite kind of historical fiction cover, but I've heard the contents inside are great. The reason why I want to pick this up is because I'm participating in Chantal Reads All Day's year-long reading challenge, and each month impacts the next book. So last month I read Divine Rivals, and the prompt is to go to page 50 and scan the words and pick a word and then see if you can find a book with the title. So I scanned the words, and the ones that I could find books for were Breath, Little, and Blue, and Mother. And so Bluebird is the one that I'm picking, and hopefully we'll get this read. And if not, maybe maybe I'll read another one in September, but this I'm hoping to get to in September. This last one to me is a transition between historical and classic and contemporary. I'm talking about A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith, another chunky modern classic. And what I mean by this is it's not quite historical because I think this was written in the 1940s and it's set during the time it was written in, so it's a contemporary for its time, but it doesn't quite fit in Victober and it doesn't quite fit in my contemporary stack, so I'm including it here. I've always been intrigued by this classic. I know it's a coming of age story about a girl in Brooklyn. I'm a little dubious about coming of age. Sometimes they work for me really well, sometimes those stories not so much. I would love to see how I get along with this one. Transitioning into my Victober pile of possibilities. This is a big booktube event. I've never really participated in the past, I don't think. Basically, for the month of October, people read Victorian literature, which is like 1830 something to 1901, the Victorian era, I think. And I have a few pile of possibilities. The first one being The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I hope to buddy read this with Amy of Hearthridge. I've heard wonderful things about this like ghostly, creepy Victorian classic, and I'm excited to be swept away. I loved Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I just need another gothic, fake, ghostly kind of vibe of a classic book to fall in love with. I hope this will be it. A classic that I need to read, but I don't think I'm gonna like, but I want to try it. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I read Jane Eyre and I liked it for the most part, but it wasn't my favorite read. Don't come at me. I don't think I'm gonna like this one because everyone says this has unlikable characters and I need to like my characters. So I'm going into this with very low expectations, but I do need to at least try it before I give up on it. This next Victorian classic, everyone says is amazing. It's incredible. If you're a fan of Pride and Prejudice, which I am, you're gonna love it. And that is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I'm excited to try this author. I'm excited to try this book. The cover feels autumnal, just feels like the right time to read it. So I'm very excited about this one. I really hope I get to it. And finally, a historical fiction that fits for Victober is A Most Intriguing Lady by Sarah Ferguson. I talked about this book in my most recent haul. I have another book by this author, but this is written by the Duchess of York, which is like a real royal family member in the UK. And this is a novel of the Victorian era, focusing on a singular female character, which I love. Haven't read one of those in a while, so I'm kind of intrigued. I'm intrigued how this one's gonna go. So we'll see. Hopefully I love this historical fiction and really get along with this author's writing. So we talked about historical, Victober, classics. Let's get some creepy mystery books that I'm in the mood for. All of these I realized go really well together, like color wise. They're all like red and black. I didn't do that on purpose. I just looked through my shelves and picked the ones that felt like I should be reading them during this time. Starting off with Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. I've heard wonderful things about this book. I've heard mediocre things about this book. I have no idea where I'm gonna fall. I tend to be very critical about my thrillers, so we'll see. But this is about a woman who witnesses a murder and then goes back in time and she's trying to figure out what happened. Then I have a couple thrillers that are more hard-hitting. Don't know if I'm gonna be in a mood for that, especially again with a child, because they're like about kidnapping. Rust and Stardust by T. Greenwood. I think this is about a kidnapping, and so is The Girl in the Red Coat. Maybe this is about just a missing child. Both of these, don't know many details. I haven't heard too many people talk about them or rave about them, but they both sound really interesting and I feel like they could be really well done. Only if I'm in the right headspace for them though. A book that I've been hearing about forever. I wasn't really initially interested in it, but then the more I hear about it, the more I'm intrigued. I'm just slightly dubious that it will be a little bit too complicated or cumbersome for me because it's a book within a book. I don't love that theme. But I'm talking about Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. Totally fits the creepy fall mystery vibes. And finally, a cute cozy mystery is A Quiet Life in the Country by T.E. Kinsey. I've heard wonderful things about this from the booktube community at large. I know this is a long ongoing mystery series. I think there's like 12 books or something like that already. This one is set in London in 1908 and it is about a woman and her maid and they solve crime and mysteries together, and I'm hoping I get along with it because I've heard great things. Moving on to some contemporary slash literary reads that I'm intrigued by. I definitely want to pick up a Leanne Moriarty, and both of these are screaming fall to me. I have The Last Anniversary and Apples Never Fall. This is her newest release. I love Leanne Moriarty's writing. Not all of them are perfect, but I really always have a good time with her books and I want to read all of her books. She's definitely an author that I want to like read to zero, which is like you read her entire backlist, which is extensive, but I'm making my way through them and I own all of her books. One of these two is next up on the docket. I have no idea what they're about. They're usually always some sort of family story, some kind of maybe mystery or complication or drama goes on, and I just love that she writes realistic people who are thinking about things in an interesting way, and it makes me think about what would I do if I was in their shoes, that kind of thing. So I'm excited to get to one of these hopefully. And these next two also kind of come as a pair. I didn't realize that I'm like pairing so many of these reads together, but both of these just scream fall. I mean, look at those trees. They're beautiful books. These are both very literary, outside of my comfort zone, outside of my box, maybe classified as weird reads, which I don't love, but I own them and I like to expand my horizons now and again. The Overstory by Richard Powers is a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, which doesn't really mean anything to me. If anything, it probably means I'm not gonna love it. But I know it's thick and long and complicated, but beautiful. I think it's set in the Pacific Northwest, or at least has to do with the beautiful trees, which I am intrigued to try. Again, I'm going in dubious with low expectations that I'm actually gonna love this one, but I've just heard that it's so beautiful. So I just need to go in open-minded and see how it goes. And Even As We Breathe is an Own Voices story by Annette Sanook Clapsaddle. This one's set in North Carolina during the war, and it's about a family story, but it is a very slim little novel. So I'm curious where it's gonna go and what's gonna be unpacked, if enough will be unpacked for me to like it, and the writing style I'm very curious about. But this is a beautiful cover. It's the main reason why I picked it up. I know a lot of people during this time of year, along with thrillers and mysteries, are reading fantasy, and I read very little fantasy. I try here and there, but I do have two on my list that I would love to get to. The first one is Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade fantasy, I think 4-book series, but I've heard wonderful things about. A lot of people are like, if you love Harry Potter, you know, read this kind of thing. And I just feel like I need to dive into another children's fantasy and kind of get swept away. So this one's on the docket and hopefully we'll get it read. And the other one is The Bird and the Sword by Amy Harmon. Amy Harmon is one of my all-time favorite authors. I've loved so much of her newer historical fiction, and she's another author that I want to get to zero, and some of her backlist includes some fantasy. So this one, I have absolutely no idea what it's about, but she has yet to disappoint me, and if I'm gonna fall in love with a fantasy, it probably would be from one of my favorite authors, so we'll see how that goes. And finally, 2 nonfictions on the docket. I know I'm gonna read more nonfiction. I'm still in the middle of all of the parenting newborn book reading and trying to read some other nonfiction in between. I know Nonfiction November is going to come up, and I'm eagerly awaiting the announcement for that from a book olive. So once that's announced, I'm gonna have some nonfiction for November. But before I know what those will be, these 2 are on my radar. Starting with The Rooster House, My Ukrainian Family Story by Victoria Belin. This is a memoir, a new release, and I have the audiobook thanks to Libro FM. Like I said, I love a good Soviet Slavic book, and I'm half Ukrainian, half Russian. And with everything that's going on right now, I just want to read more books that are about that are set there, that are written by people from there. And this author's hometown is Kiev, and she talks about her family story. All I saw was My Ukrainian Family Story, a memoir, and I was like, I'm gonna read it. Don't know what it's about, but I'm gonna read it. And finally, and fittingly, M is for Mama, A Rebellion Against Mediocre Motherhood by Abby Halberstadt. This one I'm intrigued by because, you know, I'm gonna be a mom, but also because if I don't get to Bluebird, that historical fiction with the word from Divine Rivals on page 50, Mother was also on that page, and this has motherhood in the subtitle. So anyways, this is my other possibility for it. I know this is by a Christian author, so it's a nonfiction parenting book, but with a Christian spin on it. So intrigued to try that one. There you go. That is my enormous pile of possibilities. I am very excited for a lot of these books, and let me know what you think of these reads, if you've read any of them, any you would recommend or prioritize over others, if I've inspired you to try any of them with me, and if you want a buddy read, let me know. No promises that I will actually be a good buddy reader. I just might be sending you Voxer messages in the middle of the night. All that to say, thank you so much for spending time with me today, watching this video, and I will see you guys in another one soon. Bye!